Hey, what's up, guys? Gonna talk a quick deck talk on a deck that I've been playing a little bit that I think is extremely fun. A little while ago, I actually played in a title tournament based on FF6, and it largely circulated around this lock. So this lock, basically what it reads is that when you play it, it becomes a little bit cheaper if you have 2/6 characters on the field. And then after you play him, every time you cast a 6 card, be it summon, forward, backup, whatever, you can throw over the top of card of your deck. If it's a 6 character, so not summon, not that there are really many great 6 summons, you'll be able to then add it to your hand. So this card is like completely nuts in title because you draw your entire deck basically by playing different cards. And then other cards that are insane in this archetype include Celeste, which she can either search your copy of Lock or she can make your discard and then add 6 characters back to hand with team attacks, as well as adding or like dual freezing multiple of your opponent's characters. And then we have Edgar and Sabin. Now this is a pretty established set of cards, and anyone who's played sixth title is probably very aware of these. Maybe we'll also do the mono art 3-drop lock for the purposes of getting discards. But I think that this is probably one of the most fun fire ice 6 decks that I've come up with. And it is largely influenced by a lot of the new cards in the most recent set. So I'm going to talk about what's new that can make this deck kind of fun. So 3 copies of the new Sabin. Basically, this deck is not actually running any summons, and the reason why it manages to do that is because some of the characters, namely Sabin, and then we'll get to other ones later on, effectively act as summons. By having them in hand, if you have enough of them, you're going to always be able to pump up your board, you're going to be able to deal damage to your opponent. The only thing you're not really going to be able to do is cancel auto. So unless you wanted to make lock not 100% consistent, you could theoretically put in like 3 copies of Alma to try and make a little bit more able to deal with those kind of scenarios. But basically what this Sabin does is he's a main phase 2 monster, basically, where you put him in after your entire board got wiped for whatever reason in combat. If you are trying to strike into things that are bigger just for the purposes of either getting in damage or whatever, and they block everything, you can play him on main 2 and then pick up any of the lost pieces that are left over. He becomes cheaper if you control 4 or more 6 characters, which is usually a bigger ask than you realize, but does happen pretty often, especially if you're playing around in anticipation of playing him in main 2. And then you deal 8k to each of your opponent's forward, or every forward, 8k per 6 character that went into break zone that turn. So you swing with 3 guys, you suicide them into other ones, you get 3 kills, you play Sabin, and then you deal 24,000 for a 2 CP basically if he's damage reduced. Now I think that the biggest card for this deck is the new Mog. When I look at this lock, my mind goes to how can I accumulate card advantage while not like discarding too many cards. This Mog's damage 3 ability plus becoming free on entry effectively means that you're drawing 2 cards and getting a free 9k body onto the field, assuming you're at damage 3 and you dual free something. So his existence makes lock even better, I think. You're basically never going to be casting him for anything above 0 because you're almost always going to be on 4 more 6 characters when you would be even considering playing him. But regardless, I think that these 2 together are just a nuts combination when you have a deck built like this, where it's going to have an incredibly consistent amount of 6 characters. Now, the other little engine that I think the new pack included, which I think is pretty nuts in this deck, is this Fire, Ice, Lightning Dream Stooges little package. Basically, this is how you play it. You play Largorn, or Laragorn, or whatever. He can search out either of these 2 from the deck and play it onto the field. There are no other lightning cards in the deck besides Mobius, so Mobius will always be played out of the deck 99% of the time, unless you somehow have 2 of them in hand and you pitch 1 for the CP. When this one comes into the field, you then can add one of these 2 from your break zone to your hand. So you ideally would pitch 1 plus this, get this, or rather, some fire plus Curlax, play Laragorn, play Mobius from the deck. Mobius gets back Curlax, you tap an ice back up, and you play Curlax. You have all 3 of them on the field. This will trigger a lock twice. It'll trigger with Laragorn and Curlax, assuming you have a lock on the field, and you'll end up with almost the same amount of cards in hand as what you started. You'll end up with 2 down. And then he can dull freeze things every single turn, both yours and your opponent's, just like Palamporum can do things on both turns. And then if any of them will go into the break zone, your opponent has to discard 1 card, assuming that Curlax is on the field. Now, the other thing that I think that this deck desperately needed to be slightly more consistent is the ability to, once again, interact with your opponent's board. You can't be expecting to play the game only playing a one-player game. And so that's why I like this new Gal. So Gal has back attack, which means that you're going to be able to use him as like a combat trick, and you can buff something up by 1k for each 6 character you control. This will always result in a huge buff 99% of the time, or at the very least the buff that you're going to need to survive the turn that you're trying to survive. There are no water backups, but I think that the balance that I've found in the deck is like just perfect, that you don't actually need any water backups. You'll have enough water CP generated from a variety of other cards that you could always pitch to play Gal, or these other cards that we're going to get into. And then Gal has this ability where you can put him back in the deck to draw a card the next turn. So you can back attack Gal in on your opponent's turn, activate lock because it doesn't have to be on your turn. You pay 1, you get this body, it's a combat trick, you buff something so it kills something else, then you draw also off of it from lock, then main 2, next turn you tap 1, you put it back into your break zone, or into your deck, and you draw an additional card. The name of the game is just keep your card advantage up and mainly focusing on this lock. Another card that is awesome at keeping your card advantage is this new Strago. When he goes onto the field, and then when he goes off the field, he searches the top 4 cards for 6 character, which will be 100% of the deck. He also has an EX, which I have never utilized once in my entire time playing this deck, but if you wanted to, for some reason you could, but he's much better as a character on the field. Then I'm going to get into some wiggle room space for the deck. I have 1 copy of this Umaru. Very easily could play the new Umaru too, but being as the whole kind of mindset is get a humongous board as quick as possible, it's paying 4 is a little bit more painful than paying 2, so I put him at 1 of, but it might be a reasonable thing to put in the other one instead, because you can interact with your opponent's turn. 1 copy of Go-Go triggering Edgar, or Go-Go triggering Umaru to do a 4-card discard is pretty devastating. I don't think that there's enough action abilities to make him like a requirement by any means in the deck, but for the sake of name diversity, I think that I include 1 copy of is nothing that I've ever regretted. 1 copy of this Realm. This Realm is an EX that can basically search out any of your cards that are not multi-playable, which is absolutely none of them in the deck. So you can get another Savin back, or you can get Edgar or Locke if you think they're going to die. Then I have 3 copies of this cheeky Mog, which I think that went largely unutilized during the last, during Opus 17 when it came out. What it basically does is when he enters the field, you can draw a card. So by paying 3 CP with Locke on the field, you're going to draw 2 cards effectively. And then you can put him in your break zone so that your opponent cannot search for that turn. I like him for the deck because even if you want to play this Mog, you could always play him, and since he has an auto or an action ability where you can just put him in the break zone, you can just get rid of him whenever you want to for the purpose of playing the other Mog. You don't have to necessarily figure out a way to get him killed. Now, as far as our backup engine, the most important backup in the deck by far is Interceptor. So what Interceptor basically does is tap 1 and tap him, and you give a 6-character haste. The most important character to give haste here is for Celeste purposes, so that way you can trigger her, because her ability is every time a 6 character forms a party, not just her. So by getting 1 extra party on board, you're going to be able to do start recurring things. So you play, let's say you have Sabin on the board, then you play Edgar, you tap them both so you can get Edgar haste, you swing with them both, you get a Sabin to hand from the break zone. You can kill 2 things. You'll pitch the 1 Sabin you just drew, and then you'll on the stack put the action ability to make Sabin free for the next special, and then you do another one. Next backup engine is is Sid. It searches for any of the 6 characters. Pretty self-explanatory. You'll search either for Locke, Edgar, or Celeste or Sabin 99% of the time. All the other cards, like the new cards, are just the icing on the cake that keeps the deck kind of moving. 3 copies of Setzer, just because we're working with name diversity, and it's also an EX that can recur any of our major combo pieces. And then 1 copy of Cyan and 1 copy of Shadow for name diversity again. You're not running many backups, but at the end of the day, you end up drawing like half of your deck off of Locke, assuming that he can go off. He's out of Alma range, which is a blessing, so that you don't have to deal with, be concerned that you're going to lose 3, they're going to pay 3 CP, and then your entire combo is out of the park. If you can end a turn with like 3 backups and like 4 cards in hand with Locke in hand, and the next turn you can start Locke, or like start playing with Locke with 6 cards in hand. I've had games where the board just explodes. So you play, let's take a theoretical scenario here. Play Locke for 4 CP, the 2 cards that you had just drawn. Let's say in the other 3 cards that you had from last turn, one of them is Sabin. Tap 1 fire for Sabin, play Sabin, reveal Locke. Locke is revealed. Let's say you get Mog 6. Now, let's say you are at 3 damage. You play Mog for free. You draw 2 more cards. You tap 1. You play Edgar. You get 2. You get, I don't even know, Gal and something else back to hand. Then you draw an additional card off of Edgar. You play that card. You get Edgar, or you play. You discard 1 card. You play one of the cards you picked up. You'll end up with like 5 forwards, and you could, and a bunch more backups depending on what you have already, very, very quickly. This is my take on Ice, Fire, I guess Water 6. I think that these 3 cards and possibly this Mog are easily the most cuttable. I like these 4 cards for the purposes of Water, as well as their implication, like especially in the earlier game, or if you're trying to get Sabins to just kill something off of Realm. Have a good one, guys. Bye.